Hey, good morning. Salam alaikum. John Wally. My name is Campbell Martin. I'm currently a Peace Corps volunteer serving in the Gambia. And I'm really excited to take you around today and show you what life is like on the day-to-day basis. So, come along for the ride. I'm going to be doing a little bit of voiceover over this because I'm excited to share, and some things need more context. So first of all is breakfast. This is going to be something called gowri. It's kind of similar to porridge, but using coos. Now we're taking a walk to school. I'll spend usually about half the day here. But of course, it's not just teaching. I'll have to do some other activities as well, such as tending to my garden. Each of the students in grades 4, 5, and 6 will have their own plot of land. In addition to teaching, I also help make teaching aids. So here we are putting up some of the alphabet in our kindergarten class. But then, of course, as soon as I finish some letters, I got to start on the next poster as well. After this is one of the larger projects I have started on, which is building a fence around the school. So what you're seeing here is one of our teachers, Mr. Jata, explaining to the students why we want a fence around the school. And now, after we've explained it to them, now I'm soliciting a vote from, this is currently grade 6, so I'm asking for grade 6. So grades 4, 5, and 6 all voted, and they all agreed that they wanted a fence. After my work at the school, I got to take care of my own business at home, so here's me fetching water in order to do some laundry. Sarah, heavy water. Oh. Ayo. So this is Gambian tea. It's green tea with a lot of sugar. Gambians will cook this. We'll cook this like all throughout the day, and especially when I'm doing laundry, my host brother Sada or my host mom will always hand me a cup for an extra shot of energy. I'm always looking for ways for gender equitable practices and breaking down gender norms, and an easy way to do this is for me, a man, to be doing my laundry. And I set a great example because now my younger host brother Musa is always excited to help me put the clips on my laundry. What you're seeing here is one of our partner programs, Toast On, which does adult education, and I'm attending one of their meetings. And finally, I'll finish off the day hanging out with my family, reading, playing with the children, all things like that. Okay. And of course, gotta end the day with some good old-fashioned rice for dinner. Thank you again for joining me. Loved having you along for the ride.
Hi everyone, my name is Paige. I'm coming to you live from the Dominican Republic in the northeastern region, where I'm currently an education volunteer working with kids to improve their literacy skills. My current day-to-day situation involves waking up early before school to go for a run. This usually occurs in the darkness because it's still dark outside, and then I go to school and I teach tutoring sessions as well as collaborate with other teachers in the school. And I come home to my own casita, which is kind of on the same property as my host mom, who lives really very close to me. And I have internet, I have electricity, and I have hot running water, which are all things that I'm extremely grateful for. And the closest Peace Corps volunteer to me is about 20 minutes away. In Samana, we have to take a bus, which is, like I said, about 20 minutes to see each other. And I would say major challenges of the project so far have been getting the parents involved in their kids' education, because that's really just not the culture here. But overall, having a really good time, and it's been really rewarding to work with the kids and see their progress throughout the tutoring sessions. Thank you.
Okay, welcome everybody. As people are signing in, I am John Lee Evans. I am the chair of the board of directors of the National Peace Corps Association. And before we get started, we'll take a moment here to look at the agenda for today. If we could see that slide, we're going to start off with our business during the first 45 minutes, and we're going to hear after that we're going to hear a panel, as you can see on the slide, and following that we will have a panel discussion, and we're going to then after that be able to end with the affiliate group network. So we hope that you can stay tuned for all of that today, for all of you who are signing in. I'm just going to let you know also that the chat function is operating. It was very successful last night. It's an opportunity to make comments, suggestions, ask questions. Of course, it's a large group and we can't respond to all of them, but all of this is being recorded and transcribed. So we'll be able to look at this and see what people are saying in terms of both comments, praise, constructive criticism, all in the Peace Corps spirit. So if we can move now on the slides to our minutes and bylaws, I'd like to officially call to order the 2023 Annual General Membership Meeting of the National Peace Corps Association. And our first two items of business are the approval of the 2022 minutes and the approval of the bylaw modifications, which you should have been able to see prior to the meeting, and you can also see in the chat and elsewhere. You can look these over so that you can vote on them today. First of all, on the approval of the minutes, we have a motion by Secretary of the Board, Carla Brown, to approve, and seconded by Christina Owens, another board member. And then on the other item, which is the bylaws, which is some minor changes, some clarifications in the language, some things such as allowing us to fill vacancies on the board when they occur mid-year and so forth. You can look those over. And that has been moved by the board governance chair, Christina Owens, and seconded by Carla Brown. So we will be tallying that during the meeting. So please pay attention to that. And on NPCA, this time last year, we faced many challenges and we pushed the reset button. This is my first year on the board, first year as a board chair. The majority of the members of our board are new members. We've had a steep learning curve, but it's been an amazing board, very collaborative, and also collaborating with the staff. So I'm happy to report the National Peace Corps Association is stabilized, revitalized, and moving forward. We're adapting to a new world, just as the Peace Corps adapts to a changing world. Excuse me. And last night, we heard comments from Peace Corps Director Carol Spahn and our lone RPCV Congressperson, John Garamendi. And both of them mentioned the role of Peace Corps in the climate crisis. And just like COVID, the climate crisis is an issue that knows no national borders and is really emblematic of the interdependent world that we live in now compared to the time of the founding of the Peace Corps in the 1960s. Director Spahn also pointed out the high demand from many countries across the world are requesting either more Peace Corps volunteers or to bring the Peace Corps into their country. And Congressman Garamendi even mentioned that one of the military leaders he talked to as the chair of the Armed Services Committee, that was saying that we needed the Peace Corps in certain countries so that the military would not need to go in. And looking at the Department of Defense budget, I said to Congressman Garamendi that my goal would be for the Peace Corps budget to be 0.1% of the Department of Defense budget, which would actually double our budget, and we could actually meet some of the demands that Director Spahn was talking about. Now, one of the things that NPCA does very well is connect RPCVs with each other and harnessing that tremendous power, both through local affiliate groups, through the affiliate group network, various cause groups, and also we're going to hear some exciting news today about opportunities for coordinating continuation of service. Another important part of NPCA has been advocacy, and we're going to hear a lot about that today. We realize that from year to year, nothing is guaranteed from one administration to the next. We always have to be in the forefront. We've had a very grassroots support in that area, and we'll hear more about that. I was very excited when we met in person in March for the first time since the pandemic. And hopefully next year, we will have a Peace Corps Connect conference next summer where we can be in person and actually get to meet each other again, as I say, in person. So now I'd just like to turn the attention to the current board. Of course, as I said, this board faced certain challenges. And one of the challenges was certainly in the area of finance. And we decided to become very clear, be very transparent with our donors and with our members, the state of our finances, which included last year reporting on some of the huge deficits that we were experiencing, and also this year being transparent about how that has been significantly turned around. And that's, again, in large part to the work of the board and the staff. Just for example, at the end of the year, when we were very much in the hole, we had an all hands on deck approach by the board to really do some fundraising. We set a goal for that final period of 300,000. We met it, and that allowed us to actually start the year with a leaner but a balanced budget. And you'll hear more about that later. The fact that we set an ambitious goal of $1 million this year for our fundraising efforts. Another area that this board has been working on is in terms of a governance reform. And you'll see, I mean, obviously one of the things is the bylaws modifications, but one of the big changes is at-large elections. Previously, it was divided up into geographic regions of the US and then regions of the world. And a person had to fit into a particular category on a particular year when there was a vacancy. This year, we opened it up at large, and we were able to recruit a much better and larger pool of candidates, looking at the skills we need on the board, ranging from fundraising to governance, finance, legal, communications, all of this. And so that's what we're able to do with these at-large elections. And as you can see here, these are the new board members, which will be coming on board and seated at our next quarterly meeting later this month. And we have a diverse group of people coming onto the board. And one of the changes we made this year is we had a task force for diversity, equity, and inclusion, and that's been made a permanent committee of NPCA, of our board. And you can see right here on this slide some of the diversity. You know, for example, over half of our board has served in the Peace Corps since the year 2000. You can see that the BIPOC, Black, Indigenous, people of color, we have 6, a couple of LGBTQ plus community. You can see the balance between gender. And also, even though we didn't have the geographic regions, you can see that we actually ended up with a board that represents all areas of the country. So we'll be hearing more about that later. But just in conclusion, thank you for that slide. I just want to say that the state of NPCA is strong. We are united, we are diverse, we are constantly adapting to a changing world with true Peace Corps resilience and dedication to mission. So at this point, I want to introduce our president and CEO, Dan Baker. And rather than going through his long experience with the Peace Corps agency, other agencies, and at NPCA, I think what he has done this year as the president and CEO of NPCA speaks for itself in terms of the turnaround we've had with our organization. And so with no further ado, I would like to welcome our president and CEO, Dan Baker.
Thanks so much, John, and welcome everyone to the 2023 Peace Corps Connect, virtual again, but hopefully for the last time. As John alluded, we are looking at having a return to our in-person Peace Corps Connect meetings every July and August moving forward. We're hopefully going to be able to announce the next location and dates within the next month or two. We did decide to do it virtually again this year, mostly because of a staff bandwidth issue. As I think many of you know, it's been quite a year since I sat shoulder to shoulder last year with John Evans as the brand new, at that time, board chair. And it's been a great year. It's been difficult. I've been very lucky to be supported by a fantastic board of directors, extremely supportive. I've never seen a group of volunteer board directors work as hard as they have to support an organization. A lot of time has gone into supporting me and the team, and I just can't thank the board of directors enough. As many of you know, in January of this year, I graciously and humbly accepted a one-year term as the Peace Corps NPCA president and CEO. During this year, my mandate has been to stabilize and find some financial footing for the organization, and to work with the community to create a new strategic vision beginning in 2024 for the organization in support of the mission of Peace Corps and in support of the returned Peace Corps volunteers in the community we support. It's through this year, I've been very transparent with the board of directors about the leadership and management needs of National Peace Corps Association, and I've encouraged them to very carefully consider our management and leadership needs moving forward. Whether or not I'm in this seat again next year remains to be seen, but I will certainly be supporting National Peace Corps Association in one form or another, and especially as volunteers begin returning from service again next year. I think we're going to need an expanded team. We are currently a much smaller team than we were to begin 2022, and we've adjusted our programs to mirror our new capacity. It has been a year of transition. I'll be speaking later on about some of the infrastructure that we're putting in place and the focus largely internally for this past 12 months since I last addressed many of you. But I'd like to just say that, yeah, for me, in many ways, the joy has returned to National Peace Corps Association beginning this year with some in-person events, to see Peace Corps volunteer success stories coming across our channel again. Those of you who joined early saw videos of currently serving Peace Corps volunteers in the Gambia and in the Dominican Republic, doing work that I'm sure looks very familiar to many of you. The world has changed, though, and Peace Corps, I think many of you heard last night, is changing along with it to meet new needs. What I see from my perspective is a world that is really hurting, and we've often said in the history of our organization that the world has never needed Peace Corps than it does right now, and maybe that has always been true, but that is certainly the case right now. And to make Peace Corps what it needs to be in the world, this community needs a strong and vibrant National Peace Corps Association. That is unquestionable. I reflect often on what it meant to serve when I did in the 90s, many of you earlier in the 60s, 70s, 80s. In the latter part of the 20th century, being an American in the world meant something much different than it is today. There's a rise of authoritarianism, a lack of hope across the world, and a strong Peace Corps presence is needed like never before to restore our country and our reputation across the world. There's no soft diplomacy, especially with the bang for our buck that exists, like the Peace Corps program. And I'm going to not make a big speech. I would like to defer to many of members of our team to talk about the programs in this year's President's Report. And I'd like to begin that with Jonathan Pearson. But before passing the mic, I do want to take a moment off script and recognize and just ask everyone to keep in your thoughts and prayers the victims of the recent earthquake in Morocco, and call attention to Tim Rish's note in the chat that the Friends of Morocco group will be creating a GoFundMe page to support the victims. And again, please keep them in your thoughts. Jonathan, why don't you tell us what's going on the advocacy front? It's been a roller coaster ride for the last year.
Yeah, thank you, Dan. Good day, everyone. A thunderstorm is moving through just now, so I hope that doesn't interrupt anything. But in highlighting our advocacy program today, we want to also highlight some of the great advocates that have been working with us for many years or for the first time. And really, there's no better place, as the next slide shows, there's no better place to start in our conversation and talking about, as was mentioned earlier, March of this year, when we returned to Capitol Hill for the first time in 3 years. 120 people from all around the country coming to Capitol Hill. And that included some members from our Minnesota delegation. And as the next slide shows, they were able to meet with their senator, Amy Klobuchar, and our agenda for 2023, as was referenced last night, passing the Peace Corps Reauthorization Act and also increasing funding for the Peace Corps for the second consecutive year. So we did a lot of work, as we always do in March during our national days of advocacy in support of the Peace Corps. But our work hasn't stopped. And indeed, as we move forward now into the months of August and September, we've been busy. And as our slide shows here, we have been out in the field. This is the time when instead of coming to Washington, we're doing work out in the field, such as our Louisville, Kentucky RPCVs here holding a in-person meeting with Representative Morgan McGarvey, one of the new members of Congress, meeting with Louisville area Peace Corps volunteers and return volunteers. Meanwhile, in Utah, a virtual office meeting was held, including members from across Utah meeting with representatives and staff of Senator Mike Lee. And a little bit earlier in the summer in Hawaii, in Oahu, the 4th of July parade featured the RPCVs of Hawaii doing advocacy in the form of reminding thousands of people that the Peace Corps continues its work and is ongoing. More recently, in Summit, New Jersey, a social gathering was held that included conversations about advocacy and included this photo message to Senator Robert Menendez, thanking him for his support of the Peace Corps. And a step back to Utah just last week, an op-ed written about the importance of the Peace Corps Reauthorization Act, the importance of the Peace Corps. This op-ed was printed in 2 newspapers in Ogden and in Provo, and is part of an ongoing effort that I'm going to speak to in a moment. And all of that relates to efforts at the federal level, but there's also important work to be done at the state and local level. And we wanted to share a great victory in the state of Colorado that happened earlier this year. And we've got a video that we want to play now to highlight that great success story.
I had my master's degree before I went to the Peace Corps, and I never really thought about it until I saw the Maryland bill pass. And I thought, well, wait a second, that's something that could really help a lot of volunteers as they're coming back from service to be able to make their higher education more affordable. This bill all started when I saw a Facebook post from the National Peace Corps Association showing that Maryland had passed a similar bill allowing for in-state tuition in Maryland. And I just randomly emailed my local legislator, asking if she would be interested in sponsoring a bill similar to that. I really had no expectations that I would even get a response of an email. And the next morning I had an email with a date and time to meet saying that they were interested, and it went from there. I then connected with the advocacy chair from our Colorado returned Peace Corps volunteers, and we worked together to craft the legislation with Representative Amabile to advocate for it. We spoke before the Senate education hearing and the House education hearing to get the bill passed. I had no experience passing legislation before I started this. I actually had to Google, how does a bill become a law in Colorado? I really didn't know anything about this, and still I was able to help advocate for this and get it past the finish line. So I'm really proud of that. And I think other volunteers can do this. Even if they don't know what they're doing, it's possible. People can advocate for the Peace Corps by connecting with the National Peace Corps Association. You can go to their website at peacecorpsconnect.org for lots of resources. You can also connect with your local or state group for returned Peace Corps volunteers and see what ways you can advocate locally.
I want to just thank everyone who's been involved in our advocacy efforts over the years. And we've got many ways in which you can become involved in supporting our advocacy program. And you heard the call last night, for those of you who are with us, from Representative Garamendi. We need everybody involved to move Peace Corps legislation forward. And we started this morning with his call. He referenced Republicans who serve on the House Foreign Affairs Committee. We reached out to about a dozen constituents who are represented by Republicans from those states. Are on the Foreign Affairs Committee, to start urging them to reach out, to hold meetings, to write op-eds. And for all of you, I'm going to put two opportunities coming up on Tuesday to get involved. We're going to do 2 Zoom sessions, one that will be on organizing a district office advocacy meeting, still plenty of time to do that. And then the other on our op-ed and letters to the editor mobilization. So thank you again, and back to you, Dan.
I would like to make a very strong point in that Jonathan, for most of this year, has been doing most of this work by himself. We did have one other staff member, Miriam Foote, until she on a part-time basis until she graduated from her master's degree program in June. But I often reflect on how much more we would be able to do on the advocacy front if Jonathan were a 2 or 3 person team. And that is as we look at grant and fundraising opportunities, one of our biggest priorities is expanding our advocacy team to be able to meet the need. And I would welcome any connections that you have to make that a reality. So please take a look at these action requests from Jonathan. And I really want to especially highlight his often Tuesday evening advocacy group updates for the advocacy coordinators. We're just always inspired by the work that we hear from local efforts around the country. So one thing that we have heard Carol Spahn speak to, the director of Peace Corps, and since March, and I've made a large point of this since beginning this role, is the redefinition of Peace Corps that she did in March of this year during Peace Corps Week. She did an incredible presentation on Peace Corps' return to service around the world. And she, for the first time that I've seen, defined Peace Corps in her remarks as not a 2-year experience for Americans to serve overseas, but as a global network of people who are connected. And she and Peace Corps, for the first time, have been using very inclusive language to include not just volunteers and RBCVs, but host families, counterparts, local staff, in what we describe as a global and vibrant network. And this is where NPCA comes in more than anywhere else. And I've heard this from many of you, that NPCA is a network. We are the platform for a network of groups, of individuals, for connecting with one another, for social impact needs, for professional needs. And if you go to the next slide, I would like to share a few locations where this network exists. And of course, social media is one of the most powerful tools for managing and engaging with a network and a community such as ours. The Instagram following is increasing and very dynamic, if that's your cup of tea. LinkedIn is one of the fastest growing social networks, and our fastest growing network of RPCVs is the Peace Corps Network group on LinkedIn, very quickly growing over the last couple of years to over 20,000 members. And it is a very active space for people to engage with each other, mostly around professional and career goals. But I see a lot of other information and sharing and academic and thought exchange there as well. Also, please follow National Peace Corps Association on LinkedIn, if that is, again, a space that you occupy. Facebook continues to go strong. We have 58,000 followers. that pales in comparison to Peace Corps. So please follow a Peace Corps on these channels as well. But a lot of the news that we are sharing with you through newsletters will also, and through Worldview Magazine, will also be sharing with you here. If you go to the next slide. One of the things we've been focusing on this year is updating membership information. And this is something we've done every 10 years. I think many of you who have been NPCA members for over a couple of decades will recall NPCA sponsoring a directory, a very large book volume of RPCV contact information and information about countries and dates of service. The world has changed. I say that a few times today, and the reference books are no longer something that are produced or appreciated by many. So the organization that NPCA has been partnering with for the last for 30 years now, Publishing Concepts Incorporated (PCI), began by our 10-year membership verification process this year by sending many of you, hopefully most of you, have received a postcard or an email from Publishing Concepts. It appears to come from NPCA as well as our partner, asking you to call and verify your contact information, and that will ensure that we can reach out to you, that we can send you your copies of Worldview Magazine to the correct address. But new this year, and this is something I'm actually very excited about, as people call into this number to confirm their contact information, and that is I'm just noticing on the postcard on your screen is not the accurate number. We'll put that into the chat. This is a sample postcard that we included in the slide deck. The operators standing by with this company are asking you to share a brief recollection of your Peace Corps experience. And the objective is to create a book of Peace Corps stories. We're calling it a coffee table book that will be available for purchase sometime in 2024. And will represent the stories that have been given to the membership verification process. So it helps us by being able to reach out to you, to your accurate contact information. We'll have better information about your countries and dates of service, so we can connect people to you and improve our network. And available for purchase sometime next year. You'll have a coffee table book with these stories and photos of Peace Corps volunteers, RPCVs. I do want to take this opportunity to clarify that this is separate from the Oral History Project. Some of the communication around this have talked about your oral histories, but this is I strongly encourage you to also give your oral history to an interviewer with that project, and stay tuned for the Affiliate Group Network annual meeting to learn more about that project. Okay, also internally focusing this year, and next slide, is our website and database migration project. And this is for an organization of our size, a very massive undertaking. And we have decided a very difficult decision, but absolutely the correct one, to leave our current database where you currently experience the National Peace Corps Association online. The website will remain the same, the URL, but we will have a fresh look and an updated website in the next couple of months. And part of that is a new membership portal using a product called Blackbaud Razor's Edge. What I'd like to just share is that this is a massive internal undertaking, and is going to significantly improve your membership experience with National Peace Corps Association, and how you're able to update your information, interact, and communicate with us. And we really look forward to rolling this out. It'll make many of our lives much easier. All right, so that's what I wanted to say about membership. I would like to take this opportunity to give a quick public service announcement again about the upcoming, immediately following this meeting, the Affiliate Group Network annual meeting will be a great opportunity for you to listen to the words of our Rupee Award finalists and to hear from the Women of Peace Corps Legacy as they announce their 2 awardees for the year. So please stay tuned. There will also be a vibrant panel discussion and breakout room opportunities to learn more about this work. All right, so the transition I'd like to make from groups to our next pillar is to highlight that a lot of the impact that NPCA has, the RPCV community has rather, across our country and across the world, is the work being taken by our affiliate groups. And you see what we call our cause-related groups here. And I add this slide just because I want to encourage everybody who's not already to explore these groups. Maybe you're involved in your local RPCV chapter and where you live. Maybe you're involved in your country of service RPCV group. But if you really want to have an impact, I strongly encourage you checking out some of these other groups to make a difference well beyond your country of service and where you live. They're doing some fabulous work. And again, stay tuned for the affiliate group meeting immediately following this to learn more about these projects, at least some of them. The third pillar we will talk about today, after advocacy and our network and our groups, is our effort to amplify Peace Corps' our community's social impact. To that end, we have a program longstanding called the Continuation of Service Project, or programs, and I'd like to invite everyone to listen to a recording from our Continuation of Service Program Manager, Ava Sundgrens, in just a moment. I would like to update on a couple of programs that I mentioned last year. Our Farmer to Farmer work will be continuing with a new partner this year. We're very excited about that. Currently, we do not have an emergency response network, but that does continue to stand by if the need and opportunity presents itself. And here to talk about a new partnership with a dynamic platform and opportunity for you to contribute to what we call the domestic dividend of Peace Corps is Ava Sundgrens. Go ahead with the video.
Hello, and thank you for joining us today. I'd like to speak to you about the NPCA Continuation of Service Programs, as they embody NPCA's commitment to realizing the domestic dividend of the Peace Corps by fostering positive change within communities here at home. Our PCVs hold immense potential to create positive change within our neighborhoods, cities, and beyond. The mission of the NPCA Continuation of Service Program is to provide a platform for our PCVs to continue their journey of service and volunteerism. I'll share today how NPCA makes it easier for our community to find and engage in new, meaningful service opportunities right here at home. NPCA has long been a clearinghouse of opportunities, resources, and connections for the Peace Corps community. We're contacted continuously by organizations wanting to tap into the incredible power of our Peace Corps community. This is the reason why we've created this exciting new platform. Unlike other volunteer and national service programs, this program is designed by RPCVs for RPCVs with our needs in mind. The Continuation of Service Program will enable our community to build bridges to their neighborhoods, stay connected, and make a difference, all while strengthening the fabric of our communities through positive interactions. This service initiative is both a call to action and a reminder to embody the commitment of that service that inspired us all from the beginning. It's about extending that and bringing it home. Our program will empower you to keep that flame of service alive. Now, how do we make this vision a reality for those eager to serve while demonstrating the collective impact that we have as a community? By forging partnerships that unlock opportunities, through collaboration with a growing network of organizations, beginning in Washington, D.C., with in-person opportunities and expanding nationwide. You'll find meaningful outlets for your passions and skills. Our program embraces the full spectrum of service, where inclusivity isn't just a concept. It's our commitment to you, ensuring that you find a space to contribute. One of the cornerstones of the continuation of service programs is collaboration. Organizations frequently contact NPCA wanting to work with us to capitalize on the power of our Peace Corps community. We've actively been building relationships with regional and nationwide partners, starting with in-person opportunities in the DC metro area for continued service nationwide. Some of these regional and nationwide partners have not just in-person opportunities, but remote opportunities. These partnerships allow us to channel the expertise and passion of RPCVs into the projects and initiatives of these organizations that need our experience, cross-cultural fluency, advanced language abilities, technical competencies that we can bring. Our unique skills and dedication make us invaluable assets to many organizations here at home, enhancing our capacity to create meaningful change and strengthen the fabric of our communities, much as we've done abroad since Sergeant Shriver called on us to serve, serve, and serve. While all service opportunities will be welcome and supported on the continuation of service platform, we're beginning with 3 main focus areas. The first is with refugees and immigration. We'll be repaying the hospitality that we received in our Peace Corps host countries to those who need it the most now. Second is through environment and climate change. We'll support efforts already underway to rally our community around meaningful ways to reverse the impact of climate change. And third, education and literacy. Most Peace Corps volunteers have worked in a classroom at some point, so we're identifying opportunities to return to teaching and tutoring. More will be coming soon, including with leading environmental organizations. One of our partnerships is GivePulse. It was founded in 2012, and it's a proven civic network that matches people in a community with causes they care about, while enabling easy organization, management, and mobilization of volunteers. While similar services exist online, NPCA has found that this GivePulse partnership provides us the best user experience and, most importantly, a way to report back to our community about the collective impact of those using it. This partnership is a really great match for us and designed to make your volunteer experience seamless, engaging, and impactful. Let's hear directly from Orrin Luc, co-CEO of GivePulse.
My name is Orrin Luc, CEO and co-founder of GivePulse. We're so proud to be partners with NPCA to provide a platform for direct service and volunteerism for the whole NPCA community. We're just so excited to engage with everyone to really continue the spirit of service so members and affiliate groups can make a huge difference in US and around the world. Thank you so much.
NPCA's partnership with GivePulse goes beyond a mere platform. It's a transformative experience about empowering you to make a lasting impact. It's about connecting RPCVs to service and opportunity, and searching and comparing volunteer programs for you with just a few clicks. So say you've been interested in volunteering but don't know where to start looking. Depending on where you are, you may have 1 hour a week to give or unlimited time. You may need an organization near your home or work, or you may find a remote volunteer position if you have limited schedule or limited mobility is best for you. You may have specific skills that are in demand right now, like speaking Dari, Pashto, Mayan, Ukrainian, Quechua, or you have other skills. How do you find the perfect volunteer match? NPCA's continuation of service programs remove the guesswork and reduce the search for you based on your location and preference. You'll be able to find the right placement based on volunteer type. What do you want to do? And what kind of program you want to support? How long of a commitment are you interested in? Some of our programs ask for a year-long commitment, but there are other options as well, 3 weeks, 6 weeks, or a year or more. With over 75,000 organizations growing in GivePulse and over 5 million registered volunteers, including up to 530 of our own members right now, we'll make sure and find you a good fit. So let's sign up together to amplify your passion for change, because this is your personal invitation to participate and extend your impact. Well, we'd love to help you get started and register to the NPCA GivePulse site. So feel free to write down the following URL or go to the NPCA website for more information on how you'll register and start volunteering, where you'll find out how to create an account using your name, email, and zip code, create your password setup with a new login, or sign up with your Facebook or Google credentials for a faster setup. And you'll find out how to explore opportunities and join an organization's page, find a match, and start making a difference. Now, GivePulse isn't just for individual volunteers. It's also a comprehensive volunteer management tool for RPCV affiliates organizing a community service event. Our partnership with GivePulse can do anything an organization would need to do when working with members and volunteers, including vast communication options. It's all at your disposal for free. NPCA passes on the savings to any affiliate that would like to join. We offer holistic support. We have tools in place that provide comprehensive support and ensure you're not only trained, but are confident in utilizing the platform's full potential. We've partnered with GivePulse because the continual development of the site is important. It's a dynamic tool that adapts to your needs. And this is made for communication and connection with simple steps to upload your membership listserv or data so that you can send emails, branded newsletters to your RPCV affiliate group and stay connected. There's no limit to the number of members you can communicate with or the number of emails you can send. Track your impacts effortlessly, collect and analyze collective data, see the exchanges between your group and others, all in one place. And we don't just stop there. There's a variety of support and continual training that fits your need and your group's growth. There's monthly webinars and new program memberships on a variety of topics, weekly drop-in office hours for affiliate groups to pop in and ask any questions, even individual volunteers. There's knowledge-based articles 24/7, and you can learn from other affiliates if you're a group. Gain access to pre-recorded training video on utilizing the platform with questions by RPCV affiliate leaders that you may find interesting and applicable to your affiliate group. Whether you're an individual volunteer or an RPCV affiliate leader, you can email and call for direct support from me. Drop me an email or call my office number at the last slide, and I'll personally respond to your questions and help you move forward. So thank you for attending this presentation. Your commitment to being here today reflects a shared passion for making a positive impact on the world around us, wherever we may live. But this is just the beginning. Our vision extends beyond this presentation. We're committed to hosting future events, launching exciting campaigns, and embarking on impactful projects that magnify the influence of our service. This program doesn't just exist in isolation. It's also part of a broader movement of network of individuals, organizations, and causes that are dedicated to creating positive change. Volunteering and service are catalysts for transformation. You all know this well. They're the building blocks of stronger communities and a more connected society and a brighter future for everyone. Your involvement matters. So I invite you today to take action. Reach out to us, create your profile on GivePulse, and join hands in shaping a world continually defined by service, compassion, with Peace Corps values here at home.
A fabulous presentation there on an exciting new partnership from Ava. I should say that Ava has been with NPCA on our direct team for just since January, but worked with our emergency response program in response to the COVID-19 pandemic in Seattle for the last couple of years, along with Kathleen Sebastian, who also is new to our team this year. So Ava has been very close to the service the RPCVs provide across the country in response to emergencies. and is a great representative to manage this program. Just in the last 24 to 48 hours, we have a new partnership in addition to the ones that she spoke about in her video to announce with the Nature Conservancy. That's one we've been working toward for some time. We're very excited about that one. And again, this is an opportunity for you as RPCVs to find local ways to engage and to make a difference. If you're not, I'm sure most of you are volunteering on multiple organizations, but if you're not, this is a great way to find needs that are relevant to the causes that the Peace Corps community care deeply about in your neighborhood, also virtually. So do please check it out. You can very quickly register online for a Give Pulse platform. Everything is free, and it's a very user-friendly opportunity and way for you to connect with service opportunities. It's also and maybe the secondary motive for us here, and a way for NPCA to report back to our community the ongoing impact of Peace Corps after the 2 years of service abroad. We engaged, and I did speak last year and recently about a domestic dividend study. Again, the domestic dividend we call the ongoing impact that volunteers have beyond to the United States following their service abroad. Sergeant Shriver often spoke of the domestic dividend of Peace Corps, but there's never been a great way to measure what that ongoing impact is. So NPCA conducted a study 2 years ago. It was launched, and a task force led by Dr. Richard Pyle and a number of other PhD evaluators in our community in partnership with Michigan State University analyzed the survey and created a report, the summary of which Jonathan will drop into the chat that you can review. And this will be, if we have a large engagement with our new continuation of service program, an opportunity for us to more regularly report on the ongoing benefits of Peace Corps to Americans. This was of great interest, I have to add, during our advocacy day on Capitol Hill. We referenced the domestic dividend of Peace Corps to a number of staffers who might be on the more skeptical side of Peace Corps support, and it was of great interest to hear what the ongoing impact is. So there is a real value in telling our story of how you volunteer, how many people we reach, how many communities we reach following your Peace Corps service. So what you're seeing on your screen now is our small but mighty NPCA team, and I just want to thank each and every member. It's a joy to work with them virtually currently, almost every day. I am currently in our small office space that we now have. It is a largely virtual organization. The update I would like to share around Peace Corps Place is that it is still very much a priority for NPCA to have a home for RPCVs in the Washington, D.C. area. It has not made financial sense to continue with the proposed property that has been announced in the past, but it is very important to us that as RPCVs begin returning from service again, that we continue to work towards that opportunity. I believe that's all of my updates today for the President's Report. I'm sure I'm forgetting something. You're always welcome to reach out to me. I'm very happy to schedule a phone call with any member at any time.
And now I want to introduce Carla Brown, who is co-chair of the Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Committee. And one of the things, this has been a concern of a lot of members of our community, and it's very easy to make statements in favor of these types of issues, but we now have a committee that is actually going to hold us accountable for what we believe in. So just hear for a couple minutes from Carla.
Thanks, John. So I think John just gave me a great opening. And this has been something that is a priority for the board. And I think that has been demonstrated through a couple of our accomplishments. One was the revision of the board election process. That was, we specifically were really pushing to be more inclusive and to ensure that the full community felt that they could be represented and be presented. It was also a priority for us to look at the bylaws and to make sure that the language was more inclusive. Again, so all of the members of our community felt represented in the language and what we were stating that we were doing. I think one of the biggest accomplishments that we have right now is really defining what the board's role is versus the affiliates. And what I mean by that is that the board is really looking to identify the DEI priorities, the diversity and equity inclusion priorities, and monitor specific milestones towards those. But we also recognize that this work cannot be done in isolation, that we are an affiliate organization, and the affiliates have an extremely important role to play. So without a partnership, an intimate relationship between the board and our affiliates, we won't make real strides on this. So we are looking now at how that relationship will manifest itself. So for 2023, 2024, over the next year, we're going to continue to look at the bylaws and internally look at some of our policies to make sure that they are inclusive. We are looking at the website. We would like to create a space on the website where we can advertise the DEI activities that our affiliate groups are involved in. If there are articles that somebody has published or are publishing, to be able to create a space where they can actually put it so that the larger community can have access. We also want to make sure that if there are events, specific events, that those types of things can also be presented. And so that the larger community, can play off of one another and learn from one another, and that there's a space specifically dedicated to that. We would also like to be able to create a toolkit so that, in our case, inclusivity is an interesting one. So I'm using this as an example, but we have different age groups. So there may be certain groups that are doing things that are family oriented, to give them a chance to know what other places are doing, to ensure that people that with young kids have ideas that they can do in their groups, to make sure that that part of the community is also included. The other large thing that we are interested in doing is identifying and working with at least 10 affiliate groups who would be interested in helping us to do data collection. As you all know, Peace Corps specifically at the beginning did not collect diversity related data. If we want to move on on the issue of diversity, equity, inclusion, we need to have an idea of where we are, what our starting point is. So our hope is to identify 10 affiliate groups who would like to work with us to determine some key indicators and begin to monitor, to help the board to be able to really have something to base our conversations on DEI around. And finally, one of our big strategies is to invite the larger community to be part of the DEI committee. We believe that there's strength in numbers. We believe that among our community, we have some really strong members who are committed to DEI work, and we would like them to be part of the shaping of what NPCA does around this. So this is an open invitation. If you are interested in becoming part of the DEI committee, you can write directly to me. You can write to Mike Broman, who is my co-chair, so that we can really put our minds together to create something that is well representative of NPCA and can be a model outside of Peace Corps. Outside of our own community. To me, this is my own personal thing. What better place than an organization who is committed to learning and being part of other cultures to really spearhead some interesting DEI work. And then those types of things would be part of a toolkit work that we would do, so that all the members of the affiliate groups would have access to. Thank you for your time.
Now we're going to turn to our treasurer's report. Jim Baldwin is our board treasurer, and he has been on the job for less than a year. We're very fortunate to have him. He's a financial officer for a nonprofit in Chicago, and he's actually hosting us for our third quarterly board meeting in Chicago later this month. As I mentioned before, there have been a lot of challenges on finances, and we've also tried to be transparent. So he's going to, along those lines, he's going to give us some highlights right now with what's going on in that department.
Yeah, very much appreciated, John. Good afternoon, Peace Corps. Yeah, as mentioned, I'm James Baldwin, the board treasurer for NPCA. And if we just kind of jump to this next slide, we'll kind of dive right in to what the financial picture is. What John alluded to on the top right, this current NPCA leadership and largely new board did inherit quite the hole. NPCA around October this last year was calling it about a $600,000 hole or deficit, whatever you want to call it. But currently, this is a snapshot of our balance sheet for those that are more financially inclined. The turnaround project is going well. The main things to focus on here would be the kind of unrestricted net assets, or without doing a restrictions column on that net assets. It's at 450,000. And up above, cash, always king, unrestricted cash, always going to have a positive number. October last year, those were both negative, but it's been turned around. Large part, it was a big group effort. Dan earned his honorary CPA and did well to balance the budget and make some hard decisions. But also, if we kind of flip to this next page, a couple of other big things that weren't budgeted kind of really helped NPCA in these past, call it 6 months. Employee retention tax credits, those were not budgeted, but that was part of the stimulus package through COVID, a little over 200,000 boost to the bottom line. And then very recent fundraising, where unbudgeted donations of over 300,000 came in. Those were key to kind of put NPCA back on track and to keep this turnaround effort moving. But again, big group effort. Yeah, Dan at the lead, hard decisions made to balance that budget. You should be happy that the finance committee of the board does meet monthly to make sure these finances stay on track. And then everyone here, this Peace Corps community, that's what it takes. People chipping in, donations, memberships. Everyone here should be happy that NPCA is on track and trending up and hopefully sustainable, not even just this year, next year, but many years going forward. It's a good segue to this next slide to kind of wrap things up just as a picture. Just noted, right, turnaround's going well, but hopefully not losing momentum. There's still plenty of work to do, plenty of fundraising to get out there and chase down. Right in the middle here, and Dan has noted this, historically NPCA has been pretty reliant on large donations. And as part of a new strategic path forward, Dan's going to try and come up with more of a diverse set of funding sources to make, basically to kind of move risk off of those budgets going forward. Just kind of big donations come and go and can be risky. And that's kind of how NPCA got in some trouble this past year. But overall, your key takeaway in just this kind of small segment on financial sustainability of the organization, NPCA is on stable footing right now to kind of give Dan and the rest of the team some breathing room to kind of chart that new strategic path on kind of what matters to all of us and kind of what matters for NPCA going forward. And with that, I think we're kind of diving more into fundraising in general. I believe I'm kind of passing the baton to Molly. I believe a nice thermometer slide that everyone loves is coming back, but she can kind of dive more into the fundraising goal for this year and what that means to NPCA.
Great. Thanks so much, Jim. Hi, everyone. My name is Molly O'Brien. I'm the development manager here at NPCA. I served as a Peace Corps volunteer in Jordan and in Thailand. I just wanted to first thank everyone for their participation in today's event. We could not do this without our generous supporters, our mission partners, and our Shriver Leadership Circle members. Our mission partners are those who contribute $50 or more, and our Shriver Leadership Circle are our donors giving $1,000 or more. I want to thank everyone who has renewed their support this year, and a special thank you to those who have made a gift for the first time. I would also like to encourage everyone to join us as either a mission partner or Shriver Leadership Circle member. Without you, NPCA could not be successful. And with your help, we are stronger as a community. And even if you cannot give today, you can still support our community by reaching out to your friends and fellow RPCVs and sharing the link to donate. You may also consider other ways to give as outlined on the screen. We will be sharing a link to donate in the chat. You can donate at any time by going to our website and clicking the Give Now button in the top right corner. It takes less than 3 minutes. And while your financial support is critical to our mission, what's even more crucial is engaging with members of our community. You, our members, are the heart of NPCA, and I thank you for your time and your energy. Thanks again for joining us today.
Today's keynote is someone I'm honored to introduce, and I want to thank her for joining us today, as well as being a little patient as we're running a little behind schedule. I was thrilled when she agreed to be this year's Peace Corps Connect keynote, and she did so without hesitating. I'm talking about Sandra Clark, who is the CEO of StoryCorps and who served in Guinea-Bissau, West Africa, as an education volunteer and as a cross-cultural trainer and language consultant after her service. Just as importantly, just to fill you in, anyone who's not familiar with StoryCorps, StoryCorps is the award-winning storytelling organization that collects, shares, and preserves stories to deepen connections between people and illuminate the humanity and possibility in all of us, one story at a time. Since being founded in 2003, more than 600,000 people across the country have participated in StoryCorps' personal narrative interviews, many shared with millions each week on NPR, PBS, YouTube, the StoryCorps website, and other social channels. Prior to joining StoryCorps in February of 2022, Sandra was Vice President of News and Civic Dialogue for WHYY, the NPR affiliate in the Philadelphia area. She started out in journalism at the Philadelphia Inquirer, where she was managing editor and led the organization to a 2014 Pulitzer Prize in criticism. She is a longtime advocate of diversity, equity, and inclusion, and has been recognized as one of Philadelphia's most influential African-American leaders by the Philadelphia Tribune in 2021. So I just want to say thank you, Sandra Clark, for joining us, and I will pass the mic on to you.
Well, thank you so much, Tiffany, and NPCA, and hello to the staff and RPCVs from whatever time zone you're in. It really is such an honor to be invited to share a few words, and you're in for a treat with a great panel afterward. So, when Tiffany called, I have to say that, yes, I said yes immediately because, Peace Corps remains dear to my heart and has guided so much of my life. This is such a full circle moment for me, and you'll see what I mean about that a little bit later. So I know today's theme is serve, 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 but I have to admit that I didn't exactly plan a life of public service. My journey has been very much like Parker Palmer wrote in the book, Let Your Life Speak. He said, before you tell your life what you intend to do with it, listen to what it intends to do with you. My first example of public service was my dad, a career soldier, but as a young kid in a military family, when the military wasn't exactly respected, I didn't even think of that as service. I was just a kid. I had no clue what his service meant, especially as a Black man also fighting for a rightful place in America, until much later when me and my sisters divided up his purple hearts after he died. But the seed of soldiering on, making a difference, was planted in me, even if I didn't know it. My career in journalism started in Philadelphia, as Tiffany said, at one of the biggest papers in the country at the time. And it was the start of my becoming a champion of people unseen and unheard, rarely asked and often not believed, both within the newsroom and in the public. And a few years in, my youthful passion began to sputter, humbled by the reality that I was a tiny dot on a big ship that turned way too slowly. It was an empty soul moment for me, one of a few that I'm going to share today. Now that I think about it, was I quiet quitting? Frustrated, but still idealistic, I began to plan my escape and applied to the Peace Corps, much to my parents' dismay. And my eyes were set on serving in West Africa. I studied French day and night, only be assigned to Guinea-Bissau, where Portuguese was the official language. And in the end, it hardly mattered. Almost no one spoke it anyway on the island where I served. But I showed up, my diary in hand, making copious entries from my naively clouded savior lens for the book I hope to write one day. I was booted out after a bout with cancer, and I have to thank still the Peace Corps nurse who believed me. And I fought my way back in. I was going the distance no matter what. So I returned to the US 6 years later, staying to work on the continent after my service. And that job I escaped from, with humility and yes, excitement, I picked up where I left off with fresh perspective about myself and service. My parents were happy again as I settled into a career of stability. But what the tug of service also does to us is let us know when we're just being and not doing. And 7 years ago, I had another one of those empty soul moments. One step from the top in my company, having achieved far more than I could ever have imagined. But something big was missing. And my epiphany was that I missed working with the public up close. I missed listening and partnering and figuring it out together, which meant I'd stopped learning as well. And I looked around and I thought, if I don't leave now, I'm never leaving. I left and built a community engagement division at a public media organization. So this brings me to my full circle moment and maybe why I'm here today. A year and a half ago, in the middle of the pandemic, StoryCorps came calling. Many of you know StoryCorps for its segment on NPR, but what I didn't know is that, like Peace Corps, StoryCorps' mission is about creating a more just and compassionate world. It's built on a simple concept that everyone has a story and that everyone matters. As Tiffany read before, StoryCorps helps us believe in each other by illuminating the humanity and possibility in all of us, one story at a time. And I can't think of a time where StoryCorps is more needed than now. Our facilitators, what many of you know, you can, next slide, please. Our facilitators, they cross the country in Airstream trailers, collecting stories from everyday people. These aren't people who want to be famous or on reality TV, but people who come in the audio booth with a loved one whose story they want to honor for a 40-minute conversation. And you can see our mobile tour schedule this year. You can also do these interviews through our StoryCorps app. More than 600,000 people have participated in StoryCorps since its beginning 20 years ago, and their stories are archived, if they choose, at the Library of Congress, so that their families and others, 100 years from now even, can hear them tell their own stories in their own voices. And as Dave Isay, the founder of StoryCorps, wrote in his book, Callings, listening has always been at the heart of StoryCorps' mission. Finding what you're meant to do with your life has a lot to do with careful listening to that quiet voice inside that speaks to who you are. So today, as we talk about service, I want to share a few stories, excerpts from those 40-minute conversations, stories filled with wisdom of everyday people, and I think stories that will give us a lot to think about. Please advance. You can see some of the people who've come into the StoryCorps booth. And again, we don't tell anyone what story to share, and you can see just from this grouping alone what kinds of stories we get through StoryCorps. Advance. Okay, let's start.
Lola was my first roommate when I was a kid. So we shared a room. She would keep the light on every night because she would be up praying and the light would still be on in the morning. And I just always remember her in the kitchen making hopia, smoothing out the mung bean, making little pockets with the dough and stuffing them in pink donut boxes. And she would let me eat the duds. How did I not have like childhood diabetes?
The kitchen was always greasy and the electric bill was going up. But that was Lola's business, and she never stopped working. I was told that when she was little, she was the top student, but my mom did not finish high school because my grandfather passed away early. So she did all kinds of work to support her family. And when she had her children, she had to provide for us. There was nobody else. There was no such thing as vacation. And when Lola got older, she lived with us, bringing up her grandchildren.
Yeah, it was, I think, 2014. And you called me. You were caring for Lola at the time. And so I wanted to come home to help care for Lola because she'd always been the one who took care of all of us. Before she passed, she'd tell me stories about her life. And that's when Lola and I started painting them. You know, I think I learned from Lola that there's a difference between your job and your work. Your job is something you leave behind at the end of a day, but your work is everything you leave behind at the end of a lifetime. Lola, she didn't have the most glamorous jobs, but I think her work was all of us.
It's her love for us that I remember most. It was not so much of hugging or saying, I love you, but it was all the things she did. You're right. We are her work.
Thank you. Well, yes, your job and your work, there's a big difference. And I have to admit, I have seen these videos 1,000 times, and these are videos that are excerpt from StoryCorps interviews, and they make me emotional every single time. This next one is a story about, how we keep legacies alive and how we honor each other and how we stay connected. And two sisters, discovered that their brother's legacy was being kept alive. We can play now.
Hello, Mr. Atiba Mbiwan. The reason I was calling is because my sisters and I actually read about you, and we have a strong feeling you may have known our brother who passed away.
How did you feel about me taking on your family's name, Mbiwan?
Oh, everybody was elated.
Not just our family,
Everybody,
our friends.
Everybody. Because to know that we had taken on our family name, it feels like a gift.
I have to say that in my wildest dreams, I never ever thought I would ever meet Acha's family.
We met up and it was great.
It just clicked. Instant click.
In my birth family, I'm the oldest. So Acha was like my big brother. And through my experience as a college student, he added such a different flavor of life for me. Our conversations were just rich, loving exchanges. And I miss that. We did talk about the fact that I would one day visit Cameroon.
So we ended up making that trip together.
That was just surreal for me, to be there.
This was a whole overnight trip in that van.
Bumpity, bumpity, bumpity.
Yeah. Exactly. Talk about bonding in a little tiny space there with all that dust.
I mean, it was kind of a fun ride, really. You fell asleep on somebody, they fell asleep on you.
That's one of the happiest experiences of my entire life.
That was my best Christmas, yeah. So I was just wondering, what do y'all think about when you think about Arch's legacy?
You! You're very much a part of that. I mean, he was such a bright young man, and him passing away so early, that was part of the tragedy, is the regret and the feeling that he could have contributed so much to this life, to this world. And then to learn that in the short time that he lived, that there was someone like you that made us feel like, okay, his impact lives on.
We now are part of a family.
In day one family, absolutely.
Very much so. Our own brother would be just elated.
And in a way, we feel like he came back through you. Because now we have a brother again.
It just shows us that we can stay connected in so many ways. And if I mute, it's because I'm really trying to gather my emotions. So finally, I want to share this last story. We know that we don't live in a kumbaya world. We know that there's many heavy things that weigh on us each and every day, and yet. Here's the wish from a Black father to his Black son in a world that we know can be difficult, but where he leaves him with much hope and aspiration. Thank
you. Do you remember what was going through your head when you first saw me?
I remember when the doctor pulled you out, the first thing I thought was that he was being too rough with you. And he actually held you like a little Sprite bottle, and he was like, "Here's your baby." That was the most proud moment of my life. Don't tell your brothers, because it's 3 of y'all. But it was like looking at a blank canvas and just imagining what you want the painting to look like at the end, but also knowing you can't control the paint strokes. The fear was just, I got to bring up a Black boy in Mississippi, which is a tough place to bring up kids, period. But there are statistics that say Black boys born after the year 2002 have a 1 in 3 chance of going to prison. And all 3 of my sons were born after the year 2002.
So, Dad, why do you take me to protest so much?
I think I take you for a bunch of reasons. One is that I want you to see what it looks like when people come together, but also that you understand that it's not just about people that are familiar to you, but it's about everybody. Did you know the work that Martin Luther King was doing was for everybody and it wasn't just for Black people?
Yes, I understand that.
Yeah. So that's how you got to think. If you decide that you want to be a cab driver, then you got to be the most impactful cab driver that you can possibly be.
Are you proud of me?
Of course. You my man. I just love everything about you, period.
The thing I love about you never give up on me. That's one of the things I will always remember about my dad.
You said it like I'm on the way out of here or like I'm already gone.
So, Dad, what are your dreams for me?
My dream is for you to live out your dreams. It's an old proverb that talks about when children are born, children come out with their fists closed because that's where they keep all their gifts. And as you grow, your hands learn to unfold because you're learning to release your gifts to the world. And so for the rest of your life, I want to see you live with your hands unfolded.
Thank you. Thank you all. I am going to take 1 second just to take a deep breath. Everyone take a deep breath. And it is my pleasure now to move us into this next panel discussion. We have a great group of panelists we can all process together. So I'm looking forward to that. And again, this is about answering the call, serve, 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 but also talking about some of the challenges that Peace Corps and other public service organizations are having too. So it is my pleasure to introduce Nicole Bannister. Nicole is a TV host, presenter, and international change maker. She splits her time across Los Angeles, California, and Cape Town, South Africa. She is the host of the celebrity interview series Nikki Bonds Live every Tuesday on IGTV, as well as Started Up, the YouTube series showcasing one of the world's most prestigious social entrepreneurship competitions. Nikki has hosted conferences, panels, and events in 25 different countries. Nicole is also the winner of the Peace Corps 2023 Franklin H. Williams Emerging Leaders Award. And she is also a United Nations Alliance of Civilizations Fellow. And while serving in the Peace Corps in Limpopo, South Africa, Nicole ran after-school exercise classes and taught her students about building healthy relationships. Nicole, welcome.
Thank you so much, Sandy. It's an honor to be here.
Alana DeJoseph. Alana DeJoseph was an enterprise development advisor in a small town in Mali, West Africa, in Peace Corps. Alana has worked in video and film production for more than 40 years. She began her career as a 10-year-old actress. So, since then, she has worn many hats as a producer, director, videographer, and editor, but her heart has always been in documentaries. And between 2003 and 2013, she was associate producer of the PBS documentaries, The Greatest Good about the U.S. Forest Service, and Green Fire about conservationist Aldo Leopold. In 2013, Alana began working on the first featured documentary about the history of Peace Corps. That's amazing, the first one, A Towering Task. On September 22nd, 2019, the film premiered to a full house at the Kennedy Center in Washington, D.C. And in December 2020, she won the Best Director Award in the feature documentary category at the Indo Global International Film Festival in Mumbai. And starting this month, A Towering Task is airing on PBS stations across the country. Alana, welcome.
Sorry, I was muted. Thank you so much for having me.
That's okay. And then now we have Andrew Wilson. Andrew is currently the director of the Office of Third Goal and Return Volunteer Services at the Peace Corps. Andrew has been serving in this role since May 2020. Before coming to the Peace Corps, he served as the Director of Digital Engagement at the National Archives. Andrew also has worked at the Department of Health and Human Services and the Department of Agriculture, where he managed web and social media operations. Andrew was a sustainable agriculture volunteer in Senegal from 1994 to 1996 and served as a volunteer leader for the northern region of Senegal in 1997. Andrew, welcome.
Thank you, Sandy. And boy, it's not fair showing those stories before. I'm still trying to recover over here, but thanks.
Well, if it makes you feel better, so am I. Yeah, I was thinking about that programming. Maybe I could have tweaked that a little bit, but thank you, Andrew. Well, listen, let's we're going to be in conversation today. We're going to keep it real. But let's just start with taking yourselves back to your young selves when you joined Peace Corps. And why don't you share why and what that moment was like back in the day when you decided to join Peace Corps. Let's see, who's not crying? Let's I think we're all crying. We'll start with you, Nicole.
I'm definitely crying. Okay, I'm definitely crying. Just first off, thank you so much to everybody who's here. It's such an honor to be in conversation with you, Sandy, and Andrew, and Alana, some people who I absolutely admire so much in Peace Corps, and to everyone who's here, welcome. As I reflect on a young Nicole Bannister, it was actually 10 years ago this year that I started my Peace Corps service. I'm celebrating the 10-year anniversary of service, which is something that's just been so special. And it's been so beautiful to see how Peace Corps has come back into my life in 2023 in particular. I actually left for Peace Corps South Africa on the 4th of July, 2013. So I oftentimes call it my Independence from America Day, because here I am in South Africa 10 years later, I just came here for Peace Corps and just never left. But when I literally reflect on sort of what I was thinking in that moment, I was studying at Georgetown University in Washington, D.C. I was studying in the School of Foreign Service, studying culture and politics, and I really wanted to do something at the intersection of my two passions, which were international travel and social impact. I had traveled a lot previously. I was so blessed to have a family that moved around a lot. So we lived in Singapore, we lived in Bolivia, we had these international adventures. So living overseas wasn't something new to me. It was something that I was so excited about. It was an integral part of my life at that point. So the opportunity to be able to live and work full-time overseas and to do it with an organization like Peace Corps that was so rooted in having an impact on the world and having this deeper understanding of cross-cultural capital was something that was really critical to me and pushed out all the other organizations I was looking at, like Teach for America, And so as I reflect on that younger version of me, being able to work at those intersections was critical, and it's the thing that keeps me in those two spaces to this day.
Well, and you're still living in South Africa.
Yes, coming to you live from Cape Town right now.
She never came back. There you go. Thank you, Nicole. Andrew, what's your origin story with Peace Corps?
Sure, happy to share. And first of all, Nikki, your enthusiasm and your commitment to uplifting voices from around the world is inspiring. Alana, I've learned so much about the Peace Corps from all your work, and so thank you for your tireless promotion of the Peace Corps and explaining that to the world. And certainly thank you to Dan, all the folks at NPCA and the staff, and all the members here today. It's amazing to see you and all that you've done around the world for part of Peace Corps and continuing to do around the world and here in the United States. So my journey. So I started. I got the opportunity. I'd never traveled really abroad up until after college. I had the opportunity to travel a bit. I eventually ended up after about 3 months working and living on a farm in Israel and living and working with a number of international people from around the world. And the trip was inspiring. It was amazing. But I felt in many ways unsatisfied and sometimes even uncomfortable with the fact that I kept going through these different cultures and I wasn't having the opportunity to make relationships with people. And I was collecting experiences, I was collecting things and seeing things, but I wasn't meeting and interacting with people. And I just really felt deeply unsatisfied with that. And so I knew about the Peace Corps and I heard about it before. My mother had actually applied for medical reasons she didn't clear, but it was in my consciousness. And I applied and I was able to go to Senegal. And, that deep desire for making connections, it happened, right? Like I had those amazing connections. Eventually, I married a woman from Senegal. I have tremendous connections back to that country now. My older daughter is actually named after the sort of my host family mother back in my little village. And just this year, after many years, got back in touch with my own village. And when they were so happy to hear about, they call my older daughter their mother now because they have the same name. And it's such an inspiring story. And really is so proud to make those connections. But the one piece that I do want to highlight here real quickly is I had the opportunity to think about Peace Corps and thinking about it as an option because I heard about it before. And so many people don't hear about it. And that's such an important part of the storytelling, is making sure that everybody around the country and people from every age and every community hear about the Peace Corps. And so for me, I was lucky that I'd heard it, but part of the storytelling is really the importance of everybody hearing about it.
Thank you, Andrew. We're going to get to that. We're going to dig into that a little bit. 6 degrees of separation because Nicole, my daughter, was born in South Africa in Durban, and this wall hanging behind me is from Senegal. So I'm feeling very connected to you all in so many different ways right now. Alana, what about you?
I love this question because, of course, I asked that question so many times when we were producing A Towering Task. Always the first question of why did you join the Peace Corps? And I think there's a commonality in many ways to that origin story, as you called it, for us when we joined the Peace Corps. And I see it kind of as this continuum between self and service. And I'd love to say that I joined because I wanted to be of service and I had this notion of, being supportive to the world or whatever. But there are many selfish reasons why I joined, and I think that's probably true for a lot of Peace Corps volunteers. I like the notion of going somewhere completely different, somewhere that I had no experience about, no understanding of, and I felt that was a big gap in my knowledge. I was in a college class in my business school program that was called Food, Population, and Poverty, and I learned about various African countries, and I had never been to the continent, and it sounded amazing and interesting and fascinating, and a little bit of me thought, well, maybe I can be helpful, because, you know, when you come out of college with your liberal arts degree, and I had a theater degree, I did have a business degree, but I had mainly a theater degree, and I felt pretty much like a, you know, fish out of water, not I couldn't see how I could be useful to the world very well. And here was Peace Corps that was offering me a possibility to not only broaden myself, but then somehow be useful. And that was, to me, the service component. And I think the service component for me started growing once I hit the ground in Mali, once I got there as a Peace Corps volunteer, and I got to meet the people who I was supposed to be useful for. And then the difficult questions started. That's when the questions start with, how do I do more good than harm? And how do I tread lightly and yet do something meaningful? I think there's a lot of echoes in when you ask volunteers, return volunteers, about why they joined the Peace Corps. And many of us start with more selfish reasons, and we end with more service reasons. And then being able to tell that story about the service part is where the challenge comes in for all of us, I think.
Wow. Well, we're going to talk about your life coming full circle too, from that beginning to actually doing this amazing film. By the way, many Peace Corps volunteers have done StoryCorps conversations to really document their experiences through our app. And one of the interviews I listened to recently, the volunteers said, and it's what you were saying, it's the most selfless thing you can do, right? And you can probably flip that also and talk about it's the most selfish thing you can do too. So depending on how you look at it, you know, Andrew, you talked about storytelling and people not knowing enough about Peace Corps, and interestingly, all of you on the panel, including myself, storytelling is really kind of the heart of what we do. So Andrew, you know, let's talk about how you're doing StoryCorps, and talk a little bit more about Third Goal too.
Sure. Happy to tell more about storytelling. Yeah, I have the tremendous good fortune to be involved in storytelling at the Peace Corps, and everybody knows there are such amazing stories. And there's some really important components to it. And the way I think about storytelling and how that's evolving at the Peace Corps is sort of three ways. It's first thinking about who gets to tell the story about the Peace Corps. And, you know, in a lot of ways, historically, it's been volunteers in the field or returning volunteers telling the story. But increasingly, how can we be inclusive of host country national voices? And that could be staff, that can be community members, it can be counterparts. But how can we possibly be telling a story of these other countries without those voices? And it doesn't mean replacing the voices of volunteers or return volunteers. That's part of the story as well. But adding those really rich, incredible stories and voices of host country nationals. And we try to do that in so many different ways. Director Spahn yesterday talked about the fact that we have I think about 14 host country national staff members currently here in the United States helping participate in recruitment activities. We did an event last September at the Kennedy Center with 4 host country nationals telling their own stories and the importance of their own voices sharing those stories. And that really struck me in what you shared at the beginning is hearing those voices of those individuals and empowering them to tell their own stories. The second piece of thinking about storytelling is how we tell our stories when it is a volunteer or return volunteer. It's making sure that we do it ethically, intentionally. And one of the things that we put out as an organization last year, in part as a result of some of the conversations at events such as this, was an ethical storytelling toolkit, and really help folks reflect on that. And then the last piece is who gets to hear the stories, which I mentioned before, is making sure that we are so intentional about getting to underserved communities and getting to places where we never have before as part of the Peace Corps community. So when I think of storytelling at the Peace Corps and some changes, it's who gets to tell the story, it's how that story is told, and then who gets to hear that story here and around the world.
Well, I have to ask you about ethical storytelling. Can you fill that out a little bit more for us?
Sure. It's really about it's about the intentionality and sort of reflecting on the stories that you tell and sort of how you tell them. It's thinking about the power dynamics when you're the individual telling the story about another country. It's thinking about the biases that you might have that you're not even aware of. And it's taking the time to sort of step back and think about those stories. I know for myself, for example, there's certain stories that maybe when I first came back that, I know it would get a laugh or would get some shock value, but really now it's like, why was I telling you that story in that way? And who was impacted, or how would people think about that story if they heard it? And in the ethical storytelling toolkit, we talk about the golden rule and sort of the platinum rule. And the golden rule, which everybody knows of, it's a version of this. It's how would that person that you're telling the story about feel if they were there when you were telling that story? The platinum rule is really about how would that person feel if their friends and family members and community members were in that room while you were telling that story. And that is so important when you're doing your storytelling, is not just be automatic about it, be intentional, reflect on it, be introspective about it, and really make sure that you're doing, there's always going to be room for improvement and always more room to get better about how you do it, but be intentional about your storytelling.
Thank you, Andrew. One of the things at StoryCorps that's really important to us is do no harm. And these stories that you just saw, which are edited down from these 40-minute interviews, we run them by the participants every single time to make sure we're telling their story right, and to make sure that, our own biases are not coming in things. So I appreciate, that perspective. Alana, you did that big film, and which I cannot wait to see. Tell us a little bit more about sort of what you discovered in doing this film, and what you discovered from Peace Corps volunteers.
Well, I think, sticking with the theme of storytelling, it was very challenging, because as Peace Corps volunteers, we either have the tendency to go for the easy laugh, the shock value of the latrine stories or whatever, or the further we get away from our experience, the more nostalgic we become of it, about our experience, and the more it has these overtones, as the kumbaya, Sandy, as you called it earlier too, is this idealized notion, and we get away from the real story, and it becomes harder and harder for other people to relate to us, because our stories don't really connect on some nitty-gritty level. So when we interviewed people, and we interviewed over 200 people for a towering task, not everybody made it into the documentary, but it was a lot of interviews. I felt like the first 20 minutes of every interview were getting past the kumbaya. Was the okay, let's all agree that we love the Peace Corps. Let's all agree that, we can slap each other on the back and congratulate each other about how wonderful it is. But that's not what we're here to talk about. Let's talk about what's really happening on the ground. Let's talk about why it matters. And because, of course, our documentary was a history documentary, let's talk about your moment in time, and how your moment in time as a Peace Corps volunteer was different from what might have happened in the 60s, or what might be happening right now for Peace Corps volunteers. And then we found the same thing really with host country nationals, Andrew, because it was very important for us that we didn't have just this myopic, purely American lens on the story of the Peace Corps, but that we would have the voices on the ground that could attest to whether it was really helpful for Peace Corps volunteers to be there or not. And we had that same challenge, because nobody wanted to say anything bad about the Peace Corps. And so my first words in all these interviews usually was, okay, let's assume all of this and put that aside, and now tell us the real story. Now, what are some of the things that are important? How are you seeing this from the host country national perspective versus what volunteers might be experiencing? And even with all of that, you'd still, in the documentary, you see we have Irina Krupska, who's talking about Ukraine, and she's just bubbling over with excitement that she can make other people as excited about Ukraine as she is about her home country. And Sam Sampson in Liberia was talking about how he was going to plug these volunteers into the holes where they were needed, and math teachers, and the future of Liberia is here, and this is what we are going to do with this pool of volunteers. So it was challenging to get to the meat of the story, but once people were all on the same common denominator of, okay, we understand I don't have to defend the Peace Corps, I don't have to somehow glorify the Peace Corps, I can just talk about my experience, then the real stuff came out. And that was really, really powerful, I thought.
And what would you define as the real stuff?
Good question. Big variations. So from the 60s to current day, so many differences in what the Peace Corps was like. You know, the early 60s, you had a mostly male dominated, mostly white, mostly Ivy League college population that was joining the Peace Corps. And so the story was not tainted, but was affected by that. So when we interviewed Juana Bordas, who was a Latina woman, she was talking about being from an immigrant family and being surrounded by all these white guys when she was joining the Peace Corps. And then you get all the way to you know, current day. It was somewhere in the late 70s, early 80s, I think, that it flipped from mostly male to mostly female volunteers, and then you had suddenly the males were kind of feeling a little isolated with all the female volunteers around them. But you'd have really good stories about, well, when I was a volunteer during the 80s, and all my friends in the States were looking for their next hedge fund manager job, or distraction, commercialism and whatnot, and I felt like I needed to do something meaningful, like setting yourself apart, but at the same time seeing yourself as part of the history that you are in, just really made the story so much more interesting. And I think that was when the real stuff came out, when well, even Reed Hastings, who gave us a very short interview, but you know, and was a busy man with his mind all over the place. Well, I was a Peace Corps volunteer in the Reagan era, and there was a lot of international engagement, subtext. So it was just very fascinating. But yeah, the real stuff had lots of variations depending on where you were in Peace Corps history.
Well, I remember, thank you, Alana, when you know, there was a small group of Black volunteers in my group, and we were all excited to go to the motherland, right? Thinking that was going to, suddenly we were going to arrive, and you know, we would you know, feel differently. And then when we were, you know, put at the back of the line in the bank every single time behind every white person, it sort of was an awakening for us. And it was a real awakening for me that the entire time I was in Africa, whether in West Africa, I was red. In Southern Africa, I was yellow or white. I mean, there was never a Black in there, right? So there were all these kind of things that also were. Nikki, you're laughing at that. So we get to move to you, Nicole. I don't know why I keep calling you Nikki. Nicole, you know, I'm so fascinated by you, you know, sort of going from international development to entertainment and storytelling. Talk about that.
Yes. And for the record, you can call me Nicole or Nikki. It's all good. You know, for me, I spent the first decade of my career in international development. It started with Peace Corps and then moved on to working with big INGOs and being a United Nations fellow and speaking at the UN headquarters in New York City. And again, this theme of social impact, which is so critical in my life. But if I reflect on storytelling, I love what Andrew said so poignantly about, you know, how we tell those stories and how we're so thoughtful about them, and the intentionality that comes behind that. And so looking at the international development sector, for me, I started to think critically, not about how we tell the stories, but about where we tell those stories. And that is exactly the reason why I pivoted from international development to entertainment, because for me, we weren't telling the stories in the right way or in the right place. And I know this is something that we sort of joked about on our prep call, but when I think about storytelling for the Peace Corps, the reality is that right now, the Peace Corps is not sexy. Okay, and when I say that the Peace Corps is not sexy, I mean, it's not a part of pop culture, it's not trending, it's not viral, and ultimately, because we're not telling the right stories in the right places, Peace Corps is becoming irrelevant. And that's a really scary place to be in a world where I feel like we are consistently competing for face time, right? And Peace Corps is one of the most dynamic, intersectional, and global programs that exists. It touches everyone in so many different ways, not just the United States, but in the whole entire world, right? So we should be relevant. We should be a part of the conversation. We should be sexy. But we're not. I took this amazing masterclass with Roxane Gay, who's this like incredible feminist author, and she said that people are for bad content, and I think that Peace Corps and the stories that it's telling is bad content. As someone who comes from the social media and the entertainment space, and so for me, thinking about that move to entertainment, thinking about making Peace Corps sexy again, thinking about telling very sexy stories for the Peace Corps, we have to integrate Peace Corps into the media and into pop culture in a way that it currently doesn't exist. So we need to get Peace Corps into TV shows and movies. We need to get the main character of the most viral like youth show on Netflix, something like Insecure, something like Euphoria, something like Grownish, Never Have I Ever. We need to get that main character graduating from college saying, I'm going into the Peace Corps. Right? All of a sudden, millions of eyeballs are now on Peace Corps that were never on Peace Corps before. We need to get Peace Corps into music. How do we get a singer or a rapper to include a line in the song that's like, hustling hard like I'm in the Peace Corps? How do we collaborate with an artist to get a line like that in a major song on a Spotify playlist? How do we get the Peace Corps onto YouTube, right? When we think about storytelling, people don't watch TV. The young generation doesn't watch TV. They watch YouTube, and they only watch YouTube, right? How do we get the biggest YouTubers to go to a Peace Corps volunteer site, right? Like we look at like all these travel bloggers, all these travel YouTubers. How do we get them to spend a day with a Peace Corps volunteer somewhere? How do we get an award-winning content creator to do a show on the Peace Corps? Or how do we get Peace Corps onto sort of the more prestigious global conferences and platforms and spaces for thought leadership? Like where are the Peace Corps op-eds in the New York Times? Where is a Peace Corps volunteer sitting on a panel at the United Nations, right? Where's Peace Corps at Davos? Where's Peace Corps at Cannes Lions? Where is Peace Corps at One Young World, right? We need to get Peace Corps and our stories onto different platforms. So I think we've got the how down in a good way. And like I said, I love what folks have been saying on this panel in particular around how we're telling stories from all sorts of different perspectives and angles. So we've got that down. Now what we need to change is where.
Yeah, that's awesome. And it's I think Douglas Crockett said, how do we get Peace Corps into the Barbie movie? Well, look, there's all that, right? And so I think as we ask this question, like, why is there a decline of young people, signing up for service? And it's not just Peace Corps. I think it's a lot of loss of trust in institutions. There's so many things, right? Going where they already are, it really makes a big difference. And I think, media overall in general is trying to figure out, how can be relevant and resonant and connected. Alana, how's that all sit with you in terms of what Nicole just said? Because is that all, is that in the towering, task,
We took a little bit of a stab at it in the Towering Task. We pulled some clips from some Hollywood movies, from Volunteers and from Airplane. And because Peace Corps in popular media has become a little bit shorthand for naive idealism. So the way when you watch a Hollywood movie and you see the young woman throwing up, you're like, she's pregnant. If somebody in a popular movie says, I'm joining the Peace Corps, or those are Peace Corps volunteers, it's shorthand for they don't know what's going on. They are head in the cloud do-gooders. And so I couldn't agree with Nicole more that we need it in popular media, and we need it in a way that doesn't reinforce that stereotype. And the problem is Peace Corps, real, interaction with the rest of the world is complex. It's difficult. It's a gray, muddy mess, and development is a difficult subject that has some dark stories to it. And so I think there's a lot of potential to have that lighthearted entertainment that is just front and center, loud, in your face, right there, that will be wonderful to have. And at the same time, be able to get a little bit of the more complex stories out there. I know the concept of service, we talked about that. And in the documentary, we trace history from shortly before 61, the founding of the Peace Corps, all the way to current day. And you see this marked change in American culture with the Vietnam War, and it was just this disillusionment. Before that, you had, well, most of the founders of the Peace Corps came out of World War II. They had a very tangible, concrete concept of what war was, and so they had a very tangible, concrete concept of what peace is, and at the same time also what service was. They served in the military, and so then you progress in history and you get to the Vietnam War, and America just becomes so disillusioned with its government, and that cynicism about how blindly or how idealistic in some ways, how cynical the government was in many ways, that hasn't really left our culture. It's this giant scar that's still somehow festering in the American culture, I think. And now you get to current day. So there was no ever redeeming of, oh, now you want to work for the American government, because now suddenly it's this, city on a shining hill. But now you find yourself in a time where with these intractable problems. I have 2 teenagers, and they're thinking of climate change. And my son the other day made a statement saying that, yeah, I don't think I will live past 30. And just that assumption, just these dark thoughts that you wouldn't assume to have in teenagers. They live, my little mnemonic in the head is intractable problems, distractible world. So we live in this culture, this Generation Z is coming up with problems that they have very little control over, or that seem very, very hard for them to have meaningful impact on. And then at the same time, a culture of media distraction that is just shortening all of our attention spans, that keeps us away from thinking more deeply. So how do we break through that? How do we put meaning back in? How do we make service something that is not this idealist kumbaya notion, but that acknowledges the fact of how messy things are and how difficult things are, and that become sexy, that the concept then becomes sexy in a way, because we're not selling people something. When we did the documentary about the Peace Corps, it was very important that the documentary was independent from the agency. PBS wouldn't show it if it was otherwise, of course, not because the agency was in any way unfriendly to the documentary, but so that we could tell the whole story, warts and all. Because if we put out a PR piece that was a glorified recruitment video, the audience knows. People know when they're being sold something. And so when we tell this story about, oh, Peace Corps is all unicorns and rainbows, then people tune out after the first couple of seconds of the story.
Yeah. And you only have a few seconds in today's media age to really, grab someone's attention. Andrew, we talked about this a little bit yesterday, but, the white savior sort of storyline has been very dominant in Peace Corps. And I mean, everything's about visuals too. And so has Peace Corps shed that? Or is that still something that you think about that's still a challenge in what you're doing?
Well, I think, first of all, I agree with, so many of the things that Nicole said initially, and I see a lot of votes for Nicole for being the sexy spokesperson.
She accomplished something. If nothing else, we got a new Peace Corps spokesperson.
There we go. The fact that you bring it up means that it's not entirely shed, right? Like, I think that's the honest truth. But the reality is, there are so many different ways that I think we can counteract that argument. Again, when we think about the storytelling, it's sort of the ways we talk about the Peace Corps. It's about the work that we do, and just incredibly important to continue to show that the Peace Corps is relevant. It's changing, it's evolving, and it really is something that is needed more in the world today than ever before. Alana talked about these intractable challenges, right? Sort of the biggest things that we have going on in the world today, they are climate change affects the entire world. The pandemic that we just lived through or are still living through. You think about immigration and all these major issues. These are global challenges. And it's going to take individuals that have the ability to work across cultures, work with people, build relationships, build community to solve these problems. And I think there's so much that the Peace Corps has to offer, so much that return volunteers have to offer, that really, I think telling that story about how we're part of the solution for these global challenges is incredibly important.
I think it's interesting, the specialization that also is happening within Peace Corps. So Lana, as you're talking about, your kid who's really interested in climate change, I mean, there's countries also now saying we are very, very concerned and interested in climate change. And so part of the storytelling is the sort of this resonant thing, like, you know what? I mean, so much of the story often has been about what Peace Corps is going in to do, as opposed to what do the countries really want and where their heads are and what they're asking for. And so there's a whole thing to be filled out. So, I ended my keynote with a little wisdom and some hope and humanity. How about some closing thoughts from each of you in however you want to express it, whatever you want to say. Why don't we go to you, Nicole? There we go.
Thank you, Sandy. And I'm really going to build on what both Andrew and Alana said. And there's somebody fabulous in the chat named Kathy, who is also spitting some bars that I'm going to build on. We're talking about, answer the call, serve, serve, serve. We're talking about this decline in interest in public service. We're talking about how do we get the next generation involved in the Peace Corps. And I don't think that people are no longer interested in public service. I think that people no longer associate prestige or admiration with the word service. And when we look at the word service, right, the etymology of the word service is rooted in slavery. The earliest version of the word, the literal Latin word service, servus, means slave. So with that in mind, right, Peace Corps is trying to purport this very happy, intersectional, forward-thinking narrative of the word service and the concept of service, but the concept of service is institutionally rooted in dominion over others, being at someone else's command, and not having agency. Those themes are not only the antithesis of what Peace Corps is and what Peace Corps actually does, but in 2023, perpetuating a narrative of service when we know the root of the word is slavery is unacceptable. So for me, the solution is to shift the narrative of service to instead a narrative of social impact. People don't want to serve in the way that it's currently and very socioculturally understood. People want to make an impact. So let's shift the Peace Corps' entire narrative around service to instead social impact. Let's instead center diversity, cross-cultural capital, gender equality, marriage equality, migration, climate change. Let's stop talking about Peace Corps volunteers serving and instead talk about Peace Corps volunteers addressing the biggest modern day movements happening across the globe. This is literally what Alana was speaking out. Let's talk about Peace Corps volunteers addressing the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals, Black Lives Matter, Me Too, Time's Up, marriage equality, refugees, global warming, the end of apartheid, right? All these things. And so for me, this is the reality of what Peace Corps volunteers do and what our host country counterparts do. They are doing those things. They are having this incredible impact, and they have an impact in this tremendously global and deeply intersectional way on the biggest movements of our time. So for me, when we stop rooting the work of Peace Corps in a antiquated, nostalgic, white savior idea of charity, of neocolonialism and service, we instead root the narrative of Peace Corps in global social impact. And for me, that's something that everyone wants to be a part of.
Thank you, Nicole. It reminds me, I think Alana, I was reading one of the comments about your film, I think, and it was from Lilla Watson, who said, if you've come to help, you're wasting your time. If you've come because your liberation is bound up with mine, then let us work together. So that's what makes me think about what you were just saying, Nicole. Alana.
Well, and that quote, we started with that quote back in 2013 when we started producing the film. Actually, Randy Adams, who is a stalwart member of the Peace Corps community, he sent me that quote when we were discussing what Peace Corps should really be. And that quote carried us throughout most of the production of the film, and we put a lot of work through that filter in how we put the film together. But at the end of the day, Lilla Watson is an Aboriginal, or was an Aboriginal activist. She said this in the 80s, and there was no way of tying Lilla Watson to the Peace Corps. She had no history with the Peace Corps. And I was wrestling with it because I really wanted that quote somehow, or that concept somehow in the film. And it wasn't until one day I sat there and I just listened over and over again to JFK's Ask Not speech. And we were discussing, should we have that second part of the Ask Not speech in there or not? The first part is ask not what your country can do for you, but what you can do for your country. Everybody knows that part. But then if you leave it running, it's it kind of already says it. So that how we kept it in there. And then, of course, predictably, me as a history documentary person, for me, it's about the longevity too. It's I love Nicole talking about the impact, the measuring the outcomes. Now, my issue comes in. I love what you said about service and the word and the complications around it. I then have complications around the word impact. I was at a conference and this lady on the panel said, we keep talking about the word impact, and what is an impact really? It's a short, violent encounter. Is that what we're looking for? And so changing the vocabulary to outcomes, to measurable outcomes, to understanding what is it that the Peace Corps does. So this is the goal 1 part where, goal 2 and 3 are very, very hard to measure. The cultural exchange is hard to measure. It's, arguably the more important part of what Peace Corps does, but it's the harder one to measure. Goal 1 is easier to measure, and we have a responsibility to the American public and to all the host country nationals to measure what it is that we do as the Peace Corps. And I think having that, being able to I see momentum coming around that out of the Peace Corps community, out of the host countries, of how do we explain what the Peace Corps does. And I think that will also get the excitement going amongst the new generation of Peace Corps volunteers, because they'll be there for a reason. They won't just be there to self-actualize. They will be there because it matters. It matters to the world that we live in right now.
Yeah, I see. Dan had posted that volunteer also is rife with certain things, right? So words really matter, and measuring in the words that those we work with are actually using, and not from sort of how we look at things, is also very important. So Andrew, you have the tough task is really closing us out here. What I like about this conversation, and I thank all of you for it, is that it's not just a bunch of hand wringing, but it's actually moving us in a direction. Like, here's some stuff we can do here, that is just starting with just what's the low hanging stuff. So Andrew.
Yeah, and thanks to everybody. I just, again, such great a group of individuals to spend some time with today, and great ideas. The one thing maybe I'll add to this is that, and I saw a little bit of this in the chat, we've focused a little bit on sort of the stories that happen during service and what happens in those 2 or 3 years where volunteers are in their countries. Some of the most amazing stories, and in my role, I've had such a great luck to interact with so many return volunteers, are the stories of the impact of return volunteers once they come back here to the United States or work elsewhere around the world, and just the amazing careers. I mean, I remember last night hearing somebody talk about an anthology of 1,000 stories of, I think, Liberian volunteers, and just said, here's where they were a volunteer, and here's what this amazing career they've gone on today. And I think about that all the time, and that's such a powerful story, particularly, in individuals. There's so many different opportunities for individuals to have some kind of, I'll say, impact in the world right now. And we saw like Give Pulse, but there's many, many different ways for folks to do that. But one of the challenges is the economic realities that many individuals have today, and to be able to take time off to then out of their career to go 2 or 3 years, and the concerns of their families about doing that. The reality is, Peace Corps is a step, and an amazing step, into an amazing network of individuals, amazing careers, and really telling that story about what happens after the fact. I think that is so, so important for us. And I'll just give one very quick example. Earlier this year, we did an event at Bennett College, which is one of 2 all-women HBCUs in Greensboro, North Carolina. And there was a woman on the panel. It was a gender equity panel, and her name is, I believe she was a RPCV from Paraguay, a woman named Besson Obenson. And she works in Guatemala for UNHCR. And she talked about the impact on not just her life, but the life of her son, and talked about generational impact, and what the fact that he's 16, he speaks 4 different languages, he's been all around the world, and how it's changing the trajectory of her entire family because of this experience. And that is one of the narratives that I don't think we tell enough, and we're so focused on the experience in the country that we don't tell that larger picture to our own sort of deficit. So So that's a call to action. Everybody here, all the RPCVs here, is to tell your stories about what you've done. Again, what you did in service, but also what you've done afterwards. So I'll close with that.
Well, thank you, Nicole, Andrew, Alana. We kept it real, just as we said we would. It's the beginning of also a relationship for all of us. And so it's great to be connected. And thanks to everyone in the chat. Like, somebody make sure you copy this chat, because there's some amazing comments and ideas in the chat. So once again, what a great opportunity to be here. Great to be connected with you all. And thank you all for the time in joining this panel today.
Okay, thank you, Sandra, and all of the panel. It was an amazing conversation. I would have loved to jump in several different times, and all this story making, and also the importance of the words that we use when we are talking about things. I was just listening to a podcast. Someone was talking about having a wedding at a southern plantation. They say, why don't they say they're having the wedding at a forced labor torture camp? It's just amazing what we do with words. But I'm just thrilled to be associated with this group, with this community. And, I think what we are doing in PCA and also at the Peace Corps is really making a difference one by one. It's not going in with some massive project to change the country. It's hooking up, connecting people one-on-one with people in the host countries. And I think that's the same thing we need to do here in terms of reaching out to our fellow RPCVs who are not involved in NPCA. I know that a lot what we're doing today is preaching to the choir. The National Peace Corps Association is the unifying organization. We have almost a 250,000 returned Peace Corps volunteers. We've made membership free, and we've opened it up to obviously also to families and friends of Peace Corps. And so, but we would also encourage you to donate at any level. I know that we can be very idealistic, but I know when I had certain ideas about education and I became the president of the school board, it came down to some brass tacks about what we do. NPCA is, focuses on advocating for Peace Corps and for those volunteers, past, present, and future. So thank you very much. It's just a tremendous honor to be here with all of you. And I just want to say, for an item of business, is that we need to look at the approval of the minutes and the bylaws modifications. Dan, if you could fill me in on that, what the results are. Okay, there we see the results to the minutes as presented, passes. And then also for the bylaws, that also passes. Okay, I will now turn it back over to Dan Baker for a couple of comments, and we'll move on with the rest of the program.
Thanks. I lost your audio for a second there, John, but I think we were able to hear at least that both motions for our annual NPCA membership meeting have passed. Thank you all very much. The participation of our community in recent board and membership actions has really been impressive. And as mentioned earlier, the turnout for our board elections blew any previous experience for voting for NPCA board directors out of the water. It was fabulous to see the amount of interest and turnout for really incredible candidates. I just want to close with a few final thoughts. Please engage with us. Part of telling these stories and getting the word back out there, making Peace Corps sexy again, is engagement with our content, engagement with Peace Corps' content, and getting out of our echo chamber. I say this as often as I can, and I'm as guilty of it as anyone. We're very good at telling our stories within our own communities, within our RPCV groups, but we have to find a way to get these stories. And I know that this has been something Alana has preached with the film as well, which is a great opportunity to take somebody who's never considered Peace Corps to see the film. Take somebody who's never considered Peace Corps to one of your local RPCV group events, and let's make Peace Corps a household name again. We're not closing. I just want to say, everybody, I hope people will stay tuned. We're going to transition immediately following my remarks into the Rupee Award finalist videos. There are 3 videos and one other special category that will be presented. They're approximately 5 minutes each. So while we don't have a break, this would be your opportunity before the beginning of the Affiliate Group Network annual meeting in 30 minutes to take care of any other business that you have. And I believe that was it. John and crew, am I missing anything before we officially conclude the general membership meeting?
No, I think that's everything, Dan. We're officially concluding the annual membership meeting and moving on to the next step.
Thanks everyone for being here for the membership meeting.